Attention, citizen supporter. Take a deep breath because today we're going to walk line by line through a script that feels like transfer window, backstage drama, and talent lab all at once. And yes, we're going to retell every detail with fresh wording, new links, and that straight-to-you rhythm that keeps you watching to the end. No faffing about. The shakeup in Manchester City's goal could accelerate this very week. The American jewel who smashed records is coming in to train with the club, and there are quiet movements around a hugely important Barcelona defender, a direct friend of Ilkay Gundogan, who could become a genuine target for the citizens. And as if that weren't enough, Real Madrid are circling like a shark around Rodri. Are City fans laughing it off? Sure, but no one's looking away. Stick with me, because it all connects. Let's start with what could change the face of Manchester City in the coming days. The goalkeeper's room. Ederson, for years shorthand for building from the back, that diagonal sprayed pass and ice-blooded calm on big Champions League nights, now has a future more open-ended than Pep likes to admit publicly. Talks with Galatasaray have gathered pace. His contract is edging into the danger zone, when the term begins to run down and the club feel they must either renew, cash in, or risk losing market value. And it's not just about money, it's about cycle, about age, the player's ambition, and making space for the next phase of a squad that's already been quietly refreshed in whole areas without losing competitiveness. Enter James Trafford. When City sold him to Burnley in 2023, it was never a hard goodbye. It was strategic movement, buyback clause, continuous monitoring, performance tracking in the league, in training, under pressure. Now, at 22, with Premier League experience and the background of someone raised inside the City Football Group ecosystem, Trafford surfaces as the perfect bridge between stylistic continuity and generational renewal. He knows the technical demands of City's footwork-first goalkeeping. He understands the high-press trigger that turns the keeper into an extra midfielder. He's always said, "One day I want to be number one at the Etihad." That day may be arriving sooner than expected. Reports from Turkey suggest the deal between Galatasaray and Ederson could move quickly. It's no secret the Turkish club want a continental impact name for the Champions League. City, for their part, would be ready to activate Trafford's buyback the moment the Brazilian's exit gets the green light. The internal aim? Sort everything before Wednesday, or at least have agreements tied up tightly enough to present the plan in pre-season. And there's more. If Trafford returns, the dynamic with Stefan Ortega shifts. Ortega has been a top-level deputy, reliable, putting in strong displays whenever called, but good goalkeepers want to play. If City go hard on Trafford's rapid development, how long does Ortega accept the bench? That could open another branch of the window. Stay, renew with guaranteed minutes, or move to be first choice elsewhere in Europe. Now picture City's pre-season. Trafford back in sky blue in a friendly, maybe that one against Palermo, while Ederson is online posing with a Galatasaray scarf. The media impact alone fuels videos, debate, and pressure on the board. So, supporter, would you keep Ederson on a short extension, or flip the switch now and give early runway to the club's future English number one? Think it over and drop it in the comments. Here's the bit many forget when talking goalkeepers: squad regulations. Homegrown players, and better yet, club-trained players, carry sporting and administrative value, with registration quotas in European competitions. Promoting academy products eases pressure and frees slots for overseas outfield stars. Trafford fits that equation like a glove, and Pep has always valued it when the talent ceiling is genuinely high. Changing focus, though still on the future theme, the depth of special youngsters in the City ecosystem is wild. Some names you know, others are still to erupt. Fabrizio Romano, yes, the man who never sleeps in a transfer window, has stressed there's internal consensus at the City Football Academy that this crop could produce more than one global elite player. And we're not just talking another Phil Foden. The list is long. Farah Nipan has been cited internally as a midfielder with precocious space awareness. The club use him as a case study when talking tactical maturity beyond his years. Franco Mastenuano, another name doing the rounds in the corridors, is regularly referenced as a model of physical development matched to rapid decision-making. Oscar Bob needs little introduction. He's trained, he's played, he's already drawn public praise from Bernardo Silva. And when a footballer as cerebral as Bernardo says he loves your game, pay attention. It means the lad sees pictures at city speed. And then there's Divine Mukasa. He's joked himself that his style has shades of Kevin De Bruyne. Sounds bold, but look at the numbers. 17 goals and 25 assists in one academy season. Output from an attacking midfielder who attacks space, arrives in the box, and slips teammates through on goal. With physical polishing, off-ball reading, and tempo adjustment for senior football, you can dream of a modern, hybrid number 10 who plays inside or drops into the half space. But the gem dominating international headlines carries a U.S. passport, Kevin Sullivan. At 14, he's already made history by signing a first-team deal with the Philadelphia Union, an outright record. City didn't hang about. They secured an agreement that guarantees his formal move in 2027 when he hits the age threshold for an international transfer. Until then, full monitoring, technical exchanges, and, according to Romano, a scheduled spell in England for supervised training. Bradley Wright Phillips went straight to it. Rare natural talent in U.S. football. Taylor Twellman, who's tracked the American youth scene for years, said at 14 he was the best global player of his age in that role. The hype is real. Here's the secret. Manage the hype. City learned with Foden that patience is a weapon. Don't burn stages. Don't build a star at 17 who fades at 20. The philosophy is progressive training load, gradual integration, escalating challenge. And think of the symbolism. Pep Guardiola, who turned Foden into a development benchmark at the height of a superstar squad, could now shepherd Sullivan along the same path backed by every performance science tool the club have built in recent years. If supporters hold their nerve, City could run a talent relay across academy, CFG network, and first team that sustains competitiveness for a decade. Don't go anywhere. The right-back slot is heating up. Kyle Walker's gradual winding down, one of the defensive pillars of the Pep era, leaves a delicate gap. Rico Lewis helps with his versatility, but he's still an inverted midfielder by formation. Not the same as an elite defender who wins long recoveries and links inside. The club are scanning the market. Some murmurings point to feelers in the English scene. Others say Newcastle are trying to lock down Tino Livramento with an extended deal precisely because of interest from heavyweights. And in the sift, one heavyweight name appears, Jules Koundé of Barcelona. Koundé joined Barca from Sevilla in a hefty operation, somewhere around 41-42 million at the time, and has since become a key tactical piece. A center-back by trade, a full-back by competitive necessity, excellent in 1v1 defending and increasingly confident carrying forward. Under Hansi Flick, and earlier in Xavi's different shapes, Koundé on the right formed a potent pairing with Lamine Yamal, high cover, supported build-up, long recovery runs in transition, and even late-box arrivals. Remember that domestic decider where he blasted a late strike that turned the match? That's the sort of action that sticks in a sporting director's mind. Why would City look at Koundé? First, profile fit. He brings security in open field and the mobility needed for Pep's tactical flips, where the fullback tucks in as a build-up center half while the midfielder steps on. Second, peak age. Third, a winning resume under pressure. And fourth, human links. Ilkay Gundogan knows Koundé from the dressing room, big matches, heavy training blocks in Barcelona. When you're pondering paying big for a defender, a trusted ex-teammate's word matters. It doesn't mean Gundogan decides, but it does build internal confidence. Let's be realistic. Barcelona won't let Koundé walk easily. His deal runs to 2027, and the Catalans, though financially squeezed, have been trying to ring-fence defensive assets. Still, the window is long. City have form for patience, and an early inquiry can take the temperature. Exit fee, player appetite, add-on structures, swap components, performance clauses. If City escalate to formal interest, the negotiation becomes a full-blown saga and a long video, which is why you're here. While those pieces move, a rumble out of Madrid won't die down. Florentino Perez wants Rodri. With Toni Kroos gone and Real reshaping their midfield for the coming years, what's more logical than targeting the best holding midfielder on the planet? The snag? He already plays for the best team on the planet, and he doesn't want to leave. At least that's the echo among City supporters and people near the club environment. Reports in Spain suggest Real would free financial space, even listening to offers for forwards such as Rodrigo, to bankroll a monster push. Estimates vary, 70–85 million with headroom to stretch if talks progressed. But let's be honest, that doesn't sniff the sporting value Rodri holds for City. The Sky Blue fan response was instant and sharp. One viral comment: Real think they can do to City what they've tried elsewhere this summer. Show up late, flash the badge, seduce with history and lift a pillar. Another went further. Madrid won't pay 100 million for a defensive midfielder, and even if they did, City wouldn't bite. Rodri is priceless, and memory bites back. On the Ballon d'Or night, when Rodri was honored and some Real figures didn't show, a section of City's fan base took note. Sell him now to those who snubbed him? Tough to imagine. There's also the contract angle. Rodri is signed through 2027. Not short, but close enough for the board to plan a preemptive extension. Lock it in now, avoid a circus during the Club World Cup build-up, and slam the door on aggressive 2026 probing. It doubles as an internal message. Pillars stay, the cycle continues. Rodri himself has said publicly he lives in the present at City, loves the Premier League, and that the environment makes him better. Of course he loves La Liga. He's Spanish. But home is where you grow as a footballer and lift silverware. He's doing both in Manchester. So let's tie every thread. A possible Ederson exit generates cash, wage headroom, and a sporting rationale to chase a structural reinforcement elsewhere. Trafford's return strengthens the homegrown quota and signals commitment to the academy. Interest in Koundé shows City are preparing for life after Walker, keeping defensive depth to attack every front all season. The talent pipeline, Nipan, Mastinuano, Bob, Mukasa, Sullivan, means the club don't need to throw fortunes at every future replacement. And ring-fencing Rodri is the anchor that holds the whole structure. Without a stable midfield, no keeper builds, no fullback inverts, no academy gem gets clean ball in the final third. Now picture the video narrative. You open with a breaking siren, cut to Ederson clips, splice in Trafford's impossible save, flash the buyback clause graphic, cut to Pep's stern face at a presser, drop in Kevin Sullivan signing at 14 in the US, cut to Bernardo smiling while talking about Oscar Bob, roll Koundé shutting down Haaland in Europe, and close the segment with Rodri lifting silver while the caption blinks, untouchable. This stitching grabs viewers because these aren't isolated. Headlines. It's a chessboard. If you're building a long-form video, use breathing beats to re-engage. After the goalkeeper's block, straight question to the audience. Do you keep Ederson or back the future? Comment now. I want to see how many of you are ready to turn the page. After the academy block, which of these prospects hits the first team first? And in the Koundé section, spend big or save the money for another position? That interaction keeps retention high and supercharges comments, which feeds the video's reach. When we talk about goalkeepers at Manchester City, plenty of people see only the one wearing gloves on the pitch. The boards see numbers, registration rules, physical cycles, wages relative to the budget, and the domino effect across an entire window. That's why Ederson's possible departure is more than an isolated transfer. It could fund a tactical reset, open room for an in-house promotion, and even influence moves in other positions, like the push for an elite fullback. So let's stitch these pieces together so you can understand why City are moving now. The market value of an experienced keeper with a haul of trophies and a rare technical profile plummets once there's little contract time left. Everyone knows the selling club loses leverage. If Galatasaray really have pressed for Ederson and the player has shown an openness to testing a new league, City need to act before he enters his final year and the price collapses. What's being murmured in European backrooms is that a deal at this stage tends to land in a middle band, not striker money, but not pocket change either. City aren't thinking only about the check. They're thinking about timing. Cashing in now, reallocating the wage into another area, and at the same time, triggering the buyback for James Trafford turns a potential loss into a multi-layered opportunity. Here's the subtle bit. A buyback at a preset figure cuts uncertainty. When City sold Trafford to Burnley, they didn't surrender total control. By reabsorbing him, the club know exactly what they'll pay and can budget the move even before Ederson is sold. That creates accounting headroom to calibrate the next plays in the window, for example, testing the waters for Jules Koundé without breaching projected spend limits for the reporting period. And if Ortega ends up attracting a bid, even more liquidity flows into the system. A planned generational handover becomes a self-financing mechanism. Now fold in the regulations. In the Premier League, the registered squad for the season can include up to 25 players aged over 21, but there's a minimum homegrown requirement. Under 21s don't take up a main list slot. When you reintroduce into the squad someone who counts as club-trained or homegrown, as Trafford does under the English registration, you not only preserve technical quality, you also help satisfy the quota and free up flexibility for future overseas signings. That is gold in a window where Pep and the board want room to tweak more than one position. European competitions follow a similar logic, with club-trained and association-trained categories demanding advanced planning. Having a keeper who spent years in the academy simplifies Champions League registration and strips away bureaucratic pressure. All of this would fade into the background if Trafford weren't any good, but he is. What he hasn't yet built is Champions League mileage under maximum stress. So City almost certainly model a smart year-one transition. Picture a layered plan: early season controlled rotation, domestic cup matches to accelerate adaptation, dedicated short build sessions with Stones, Akanji, and Rodri to synchronize restarts, and intensive sweeper training outside the box. Something Ederson mastered and City do not want to lose. Pep has always used pre-seasons to install patterns. If Trafford arrives early, he gets weeks in the lab. So where does Ortega sit in all this? He's the safety wild card. If City decide to keep Ortega around through Trafford's first season back, the club lock in immediate depth in case the transition wobbles. But there's a reverse risk. Keeping a goalkeeper who's too good to remain understudy for long can create friction. City have navigated that before in other positions, offering strategic minutes and being transparent about development pathways. Should an offer land from a club guaranteeing a starting role, Ortega could push the issue. This is where honest squad engineering matters. City can't slap on a fantasy price if they want to keep their reputation as a club that looks after players' careers. Now link this to the next thread, right back. If a heavy wage leaves the goalkeeping group and a lighter salary for a young club-trained player comes in, you free space in the wage bill to chase a premium reinforcement in the defensive line. That's exactly where the name Jules Koundé starts to make practical sense, not just theoretical noise. Prizing a defender on a long Barcelona contract is never cheap, but City can structure it in installments, performance variables, bonuses tied to trophies or Champions League rounds, and amortize the fee across the length of the deal. If the immediate window outlay is offset by savings elsewhere, Ederson out, Trafford in, the maths sharpens. And it's not just maths, it's on-pitch philosophy. Pep has been rotating build-up structures with the fullback coming inside and a center-half rolling wide. With Stones, Akanji, Gvardiol, and rotating guards like Walker, City have created shapes that fold and unfold under pressure. Koundé drops into these patterns naturally because he already lives that tactical elasticity at Barca. Locks into a back four, jumps into a high fullback lane, tucks into a back three base, steps into space when the winger pins the opposing fullback. His chemistry with a young creative attacker like Lamine Yamal shows he can combine with emerging talent, relevant if City plan to blend their established core with rising kids. Ilkay Gundogan becomes the human connector in the equation. He knows Koundé's training habits, temperament, and big match response. When a club weigh an expensive buy, the word of a trusted former teammate carries more than an isolated data point. Gundogan can validate whether the player tolerates rotation, whether his dressing room profile fits Manchester's hyper-competitive environment, and whether he can shoulder Guardiola's detail-heavy tactical demands. That trims scouting risk. Now swing back into midfield, because none of this matters if the engine is called Rodri and he isn't there. The Spanish rumor mill putting Real Madrid in predator mode is not trivial. Florentino Perez understands that replacing Toni Kroos isn't swapping like for like. It's rebuilding tempo control. Rodri provides defensive reading and progression few can match. But what Madrid want and what they can actually land are different things. City fans have already made their stance clear. He's not leaving. The board, though, can't build strategy on terrace sentiment alone. They must lock things down contractually. Extending Rodri before he hits the final 2 years is vital. City's wage architecture has tiers. Haaland and De Bruyne sit at the summit. Below them come structural starters, then premium rotation, then youth and development. Where does Rodri slot? At the sporting summit. If the renewal lifts him towards the top bands, it sends a double signal. We reward those who uphold the system, and we don't lose silent captains. And yes, Rodri is a silent captain, speaks little, organizes by positioning, radiates confidence that lets fullbacks push and midfielders float. Without that pendulum, City become a different side. A hypothetical Rodri exit would rip a hole the market can't easily plug. Who would be the target? There are young holding midfielders dotted around the City football group who are tracked continuously. The club cross-references pressure data, progressive passing, and defensive zone occupation against physical projections. Even so, converting projection into elite impact is rare. That's why the priority is to avoid reaching that cliff edge. Keep Rodri and the rest of the architecture can breathe. See how everything links. Sell at the peak before value evaporates. Ederson, rejuvenate without losing identity. Trafford, redirect resources to replace a legend at fullback. Koundé or a similar profile. Lay the path for the next wave of talent. Nippon, Mastanuano, Bob, Mukasa, and longer-term Sullivan. And ring-fence the tactical heart, Rodri. That's the City spine being rebuilt quietly. When the season kicks off and the broadcast cutaways show a new keeper behind a redrawn line, you'll remember this script. Before we move on to fitting in the calendar, minute distribution and the integration plan by age bands, academy, graduated promotions, loans within the sister club network, and strategic cup usage, let me ask, are you seeing how every market decision opens or closes 3 others? That's why Guardiola keeps saying squad planning is chess, not dominoes. In dominoes, you knock 1 tile and live with the cascade. In chess, you prepare 5 moves that aren't yet visible on the board. Want to carry on? Then let's pull the thread on how City can run a season that may include a goalkeeping change, a fullback chase, pressure for silverware, and a queue of kids hammering at the door. And yes, we'll weave Kevin Sullivan into it as well, even if he only lands formally further down the line, because the image impact begins now. Think about the calendar of a club fighting on the Premier League front, the Champions League, the FA Cup, the League Cup, an expanded Club World Cup, and doubling as a showcase for national teams. Now drop into that calendar a returning keeper who needs minutes to grow, a long-time starter who might leave, a deputy who wants to be first choice, a potentially new fullback arriving from abroad, and an academy pushing talent that need a platform. Without a minutes map, you lose players either to rust or to ego. Pep Guardiola tends to carve the season into functional blocks, pre-season for tactical installation, the first curve to November for rotation testing, the compressed December crunch where depth decides, a January window that corrects course, the spring sprint where trophies are settled. If Trafford lands, Block 1 becomes a laboratory. He plays friendlies, trains with Stones, Rodri, and first-line defenders to calibrate angles under build-up pressure. If Ederson hasn't yet left, there may be a forced alternation until the transfer closes. If Ederson goes early, Ortega could hold the first competitive fixtures while the goalkeeping staff refine Trafford's decision-making against Premier League high presses. All of that has to be explained to the player. Transparency extends patience. Now picture Koundé, or another high-end fullback if the target shifts, flying in. City must choose gradual adaptation or total immersion. Players coming from La Liga generally absorb possession football well, but the English physical tempo bites. One possible strategy, alternate Koundé with Akanji down the right flank for the first 2 months. use Rico Lewis in internal rotation matches, and unleash the Frenchman in fixtures City expect to dominate the ball and face fewer chaotic transitions. That lets him build attacking confidence before the bruising December duels. Meanwhile, the academy need a doorway. Oscar Bob has already had senior minutes. He's the template for how Pep likes to bleed youngsters in games City control territorially. If Divine Mukasa keeps producing, he could make the bench in the League Cup. Farah Nippon and Franco Mastanuano may cycle out on loans within the City football group, depending on physical readiness. That circuit is strategic. You play in different leagues to collect complementary traits. A midfielder who learns intensity in the championship and then structured possession in the Eredivisie comes back more complete. City have done this for years. And Kevin Sullivan? Even if his full contract only activates in 2027, bringing the lad in for supervised training blocks builds an emotional bond with the club and speeds cultural adaptation. He learns the facilities, the academy coaches, the peer group. When he signs on permanently, nothing feels alien. In another register, City have used that early touch pathway before with talents who circulated through the system ahead of a formal deal. It lowers the failure rate on international transitions. Back to the central pivot, Rodri. If City want to power through another long campaign fighting on all fronts, they must protect his minutes without downgrading quality when he rests. Here squad design meets recruitment. If there's no natural like-for-like, you manufacture situational stand-ins. Against low-block opponents, you might use a mobile double pivot, say Stones stepping inside plus Kovacic or Nunez, to simulate build-up control. In the heavy games, Rodri plays, but no one sustains 65 top-level matches without drop-off. A renewal that bakes in a load management plan convinces the player his career will be protected in Manchester. That argument weighs as heavily as the weight. And remember the outside pressure. Madrid circling acts as an internal accelerant to get the renewal on the table. City can frame a package with bonuses for defined trophies, anti-tamper triggers, or career legacy incentives that underline the intent to build history, not just extend a contract. Players feel when a club is offering a story rather than a stopgap. Now let's line this up for video narrative. You open part 3, which you're watching now, with a financial movement board. Arrow out from Ederson, arrow in towards the Trafford buyback, surplus cap space flashing as a window for a fullback. Cut to a registration graphic showing how a club-trained player frees a foreign slot. Then a Koundé defensive clip. Overlay text, Gundogan's mate, Barca tactical cog, City target. Only after that do you drop the emotional block about Real's interest in Rodri and the sky blue fan response. By then, the audience is hooked on numbers and structure. Now you deliver identity. The wrap on this section has to make clear that City aren't reacting, they're steering. While other clubs hit the market because a key man walked, City preempt exits, reinvest, protect their base, and are already talking to 15-year-olds. That's the difference between managing a squad and projecting a dynasty. Let's get into the tactical heart of this quiet Manchester City rebuild and tie everything we've discussed so far into a plan that makes sense on the pitch, in the balance sheet, and in the story arc of your video. You're going to show the audience that every name mentioned, Ederson, Trafford, Ortega, Koundé, Rodri, the Academy Jewels, and even the Real Madrid noise, aren't separate stories, but chapters of the same controlled transition. The secret is stitching cause to effect. I'm going to hand you that stitching now. We start with scenario A. Ederson stays through the end of the window, but negotiations remain active. Pep manages his minutes while the board keeps talking. During this period, City trigger the buyback for Trafford, who arrives already aware that the season will come in phases. Pre-season, adaptation, short build drills, sweeper work outside the box with video analysts showing Ederson clips to replicate patterns. Early rounds of the Carabao Cup. Trafford starts, the backline sits a touch deeper, emphasis on reading long balls. Premier League, Ederson keeps the role until the transfer moves forward, or until the goalkeeping staff decide Trafford is ready for a run. This overlap is content gold. You can show how a top club prepares succession without breaking its playing model. Scenario B, a deal with Galatasaray is sealed early. Ederson leaves before the competitive ball is kicked. City reactivate Trafford, and he comes straight into pre-season as the #1 on trial. Ortega opens the league campaign to take pressure off the youngster, while the squad runs specific training blocks on clean build-out with Trafford. As soon as he's in rhythm with Stones and Rodri, Pep flips the switch. That planned handover in mid-autumn becomes a narrative of trust and transfer of power, perfect for a multi-episode video series. Each week you update, is he ready yet? Not quite? Will he start against X? Now add the Ortega variable. If City hold him until January, you build a competitive cushion and time for Trafford to grow. If a bid comes and Ortega goes, City have 2 outs. Promote a young third keeper, reinforcing the homegrown investment story, or dip into the market for a low-wage veteran backup. That second move can sit as a remember this later footnote that returns when the clubs submit the Champions League squad list. Tell it in the video as each piece squeezing the next. Expensive veteran out, academy lad in, wage space freed, budget opened for a fullback. Let's move to right back, because that's where fans instantly picture impact. Jules Koundé is not a classic touchline fullback in the Kyle Walker mold, bombing to the byline then recovering 40 yards to defend the long ball. Koundé is a hybrid. At Barcelona, he cycled through roles, wide in line, short inside support, covering a young winger, tucking into a back 3. That plugs straight into what Pep does when he builds 3-2 with a fullback folding in as an auxiliary center half. If City have Stones inverting on the opposite side, Koundé can stay wider to hold width. If Stones tucks in and Akanji stretches, Koundé becomes the third center back and frees a midfielder to jump. That sort of flexibility is what makes a modern defender expensive. And that's your on-camera argument for why you don't replace Walker with any old runner. City wants someone who sustains the possession architecture and the transition control at the same time. Now fit Rodri into that. Every City build starts with his read of the defensive zone 14. When the fullback steps inside, who covers in behind? Rodri. When the keeper zips a vertical pass into an interior midfielder, who offers the reset angle? Rodri. Without him, your margin for error in Trafford's and Koundé's adaptation shrinks. That's why Rodri's renewal isn't a separate storyline. It's the pillar that lets the club change the rest. Show it in the video as a sequence. Frame 1, low build with Ederson. Frame 2, future build with Trafford. Frame 3, variation with Koundé inside. Frame 4, Rodri's heat map arrowing across everything. Caption: nothing works without this bloke. That locks the importance of contractual protection into the viewer's head. How do you use the Real Madrid chatter? As dramatic tension, not confirmed fact. Say, while the Madrid press float the idea that Florentino is lining up a bid to inherit the heir to Cruz, Manchester are working quietly to cement Rodri not just as a squad piece, but as a club legend. Then cut in match data, trophies, individual awards, minutes played, big game impact. The more you demonstrate Rodri's legacy arc, the clearer it becomes that selling him is emotionally costly. And fans engage. Sell or keep. Drop your view below. We now need to weave in the academy talents without it feeling like a bolted-on segment. Do it like this. Every time you talk about positional transition, connect it to the pipeline. Ederson out, Trafford in, developed in the system. Talking Koundé? Remind viewers that Rico Lewis has inverted inside and still has headroom to grow. Mention a creative midfielder? Bring in Oscar Bob, already logging first-team minutes. Looking to the future number 10? Drop Divine Mukasa's outrageous youth numbers. And once the audience is accustomed to City thinking 3 to 5 years ahead, you hit the emotional crescendo. There's a teenager in the United States, Kevin Sullivan, who broke pro records at 14 and already has a pathway mapped to wear sky blue in 2027. Viewers feel generational continuity. That drives long-term channel loyalty, because people watching today will come back the first time the kid shows up on the bench. Speaking of continuity, link sporting planning to financial planning. The clubs that survive the spending reg rules era are the ones that preempt cycles. Sell a high-wage player near the end of his deal, reinvest part, promote an internal talent who counts toward registration quotas, and ring-fence cash for a strategic signing in a critical area. That's been the City model for years. It's not glamorous, but it's why the club can attack windows without panicking. Illustrate with a narrative flow, planned exit, Ederson, reintegration Trafford, elite reinforcement, Koundé, locking down the cornerstone, Rodri, development ladder, Nipan, Mukasa, Bob Sullivan, 5 steps, 1 plan. Back onto the pitch to show how these moves change behaviors in big matches. Picture City v Liverpool at the Etihad with Trafford in goal. Klopp presses high. Trafford's first long release has to be right, or it's a turnover break. To cut the risk, Pep tweaks positioning. Rodri drops 2 meters. Stones steps closer. Koundé offers an outside line. That triangle creates a short exit angle that lowers stress on the young keeper. The audience see the system protecting the individual. That humanizes the transition and builds empathy for Trafford. Key if you want supporters to accept the inevitable learning mistakes. Another example, City v Barcelona in the Champions League. The dream storyline if Koundé switches sides and faces his old club. Show a split replay. How Barca used Koundé in build-up versus how Pep redeploys him in Manchester. Viewers see tactical evolution. Pair it with a fictionalized Gundogan clip. I always knew he'd fit here. Instant engagement. Where does the supporter sit in the script? In every block. After the goalkeeper scenario, drop a comment. Do you trust Trafford to take over? After the Koundé segment, worth the fee or keep the powder dry for midfield? After the Rodri block, renew now or is Madrid bluffing? This loop of questions drives retention, sparks comments, and feeds the algorithm. Don't forget to ask them to type the one player they would never allow City to lose. You'll get a flood of Rodri and reinforce the video's central theme. Before I roll into the squad number fit, how many homegrown, how many foreign, Champions League registration margins, under 21 slots, and projected minutes by competition, I need to know, do you want me to carry on into part 6 with those numbers? Modeling the window with estimated fees, comparing Koundé amortization against a possible Ederson sale, and detailing how the Academy succession ladder could save millions in future windows? Before you go, help me get this out to more City supporters. Hit the like now. It pushes the video to more citizens and keeps the channel bringing you inside info like this. Check you're subscribed. Loads of people watch and forget. And turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. I want your take. Which player can Manchester City absolutely not afford to lose? Drop the name you consider untouchable in the comments.